walked in was, it wasn't a wearable technology, it was actually the 3D drawing pen. I thought that was pretty neat. I immediately started sculpting something.
Did you use the glasses?
No, but that would have been cool if I could have just drawn it with my mind and robot did everything else.
Right, you. Phil, Tam.
Third floor. Yeah, that's cool stuff up there.
It wasn't your panel yesterday?
Huh? No. No, that was a bore.
Moderated that.
Set the bar high for Melissa.
Thanks.
Well, for me, it's spending time with Apex Labs, actually, and who are our alliance partners. So we're big fans of them, and any opportunity that we have.
There's something on your nose. It's brown.
No, it's pretty good. We definitely have a lot of people that get exposed to wearables for the first time at things like this. Like they hear about it, they might not have invested in it yet, but events like this get people to come together and try out new technologies for the first time. I know, like all three of us are in the business that touches wearables, and we're still seeing new technology that you've only read about before. So that's actually awesome.
Do you guys have an exhibit upstairs?
We do. We're co-exhibiting.
We have one together, yeah.
Nice. Very good. And did you fly American Airlines to get here?
I flew it to Orlando, and then to here on a different leg.
I live here, so.
All right, we are good to start the panel now. So, employers enterprise track. Let's just jump right in. So, Tammy worked with Deloitte, and in April you came out with a trends report, and one of the top trends was wearables.
Mm-hmm.
So, why did you include wearables? Why do you find it important, and particularly for enterprises?
Well, if you know Deloitte, we have a very significant technology consulting practice, which includes a mobile development shop that we actually bought in like 2 years ago, so the custom development aspect of it. And when we saw wearables, we were like, this plays very well into our existing mobile capabilities, and the opportunity to bring complete solutions to our clients that solve real problems that are integrated into workflow, like was very compelling to us. And when we saw wearables in many ways is going to mirror mobile, and the combination of the two can be really powerful inside of the enterprise.
So, and you work with Apex Labs. You work with Brian.
We do.
And so, Brian, you tell us a little bit about Apex and what you do and how you work with Deloitte.
Definitely. So Apex Labs is a software company in a wearable space. We built a platform we call Skylight that enables the real-time orchestration of big business workflows from all your back-end systems, whether they be your ERP systems, your electronic medical records, and then we orchestrate that to your mobile workforce. So the goal we have is transforming the workplace by helping solving all the old school problems people have had, like how do we increase quality, make productive uses of your time, how do you get contextual information to you wherever you need it, when you need it, and those types of applications in key areas like, for instance, Deloitte supports, which are things like big manufacturing businesses, electronic health, logistics, have been a big early adopter of wearable tech because there's ROIs that are immediately available. It's, you can call it low-hanging fruit. It's really complicated work, but with the investments we've made over the last 4 years, we've solved a lot of the hard problems in wearable tech adoption, and now it's helping educate the market, understanding actual big business outcomes, what is it they need to do with it, and then we help bridge the gap with that technology.
So, Phil, you are the director of mobile, correct, for American Airlines? And at American, you have about all of the pieces of businesses possible, right? From the front end to logistics, consumer. So if you were to engage with Apex, where would be a point that you'd want to include wearables in your business?
Well,
We just met for the first
I
time.
know, I know. It's blinding.
Wearables in enterprise is a great opportunity for us to empower our employees. So I think this is a new space for everybody. So how will employees interpret these devices? What are we doing with these devices? And do they actually help customers? Our employees want to do a great job, but they have a lot of systems. IT gets in their way, right? And so wearables hopefully will remove a lot of IT and give them data and facts. Some of our customers at the gate, they'll know that the gate changed before the gate agent does, because the gate agent has to go into the mainframe. I said mainframe, isn't that crazy? Mainframe at a wearables conference. I think I'm the first to do that. So, and they're doing the mainframe and they go, oh, the gate changed, but customers already told them. So if I can give that to them in a wearable device, that's really cool. That's empowering. So I think we have to be really cautious of how the employees view this new technology. Is it just management trying to improve their KPIs, or do they want to make the customer happy?
So Brian, how do you feel that workforce adoption is taking place? Why do you focus on enterprises and not consumer?
One of the things that we've almost found out the hard way, when you first get in the wearable space, your imagination runs wild. We started in the military, so we're building future soldiers or Iron Man. Your next thought is, oh, this big, huge consumer marketplace. Well, then you get reactions out of people, like, well, why do I need this? Like, what does it do for me? There isn't an app ecosystem yet. Is it looking at me? Is it reading my mind? Can it see me with my clothes off? And these are all actual questions we've gotten when we were exploring the consumer space. In the enterprise, though, wearable technology can be part of your uniform. It can be a tool rather than just a luxury item or an escape from your daily life, like, which is what my phone is for me now. I'm like, to the internet, not to anything useful.
That's why when we were talking, you were just texting?
But what we see is, can it be something that empowers people? Our goal isn't to turn people into robots with this technology. It's to give them all the advantages that robots have that have been replacing people. Access to the right information at the right time. The ability to repeat process. I mean, the title of this talk was how to make everybody as good as the best. That's usually a summation of the parts, right? The best equals access to information, knowledge about what you do, and the ability to repeat it. Wearables can help bridge that. I mean, it's still up to human creativity to take that advantage and apply it, but we can at least give them the tools to be able to compete at their top level. That's what we think the technology can do if done right, and that's on the developers to do.
So Tim, you operate more at a higher overview level, and you see a lot of different industries. What do you see in terms of the different verticals within employers and enterprise and how they're using wearables?
That's a really good question. So there are a lot of industries out there with very similar use cases is what we found when we've looked to kind of across these different verticals. One of the ones that we were particularly interested in is field service, for instance. So the payback in field service, if you could save, say, one visit out to a windmill, one visit out to a large piece of machinery that's out in the field, it's so fast that you have to wonder why we haven't gotten there already, because the ROI is clearly there. Another one we're very interested in is, it's very near and dear to my heart, is warehouse operations. So I started out my career in industrial distribution. We had our hard hat, we had our steel toe shoes, and why don't we have a piece of wearable equipment so I don't have to keep running back to my desk, which are on these little kiosk stations next to zebra printers. I mean, it makes no sense when you have all these expensive people constantly running back to get information. You might have it on your mobile phone, but in an environment like that, safety is paramount. And the opportunity to give people access to both of their hands while they're doing their work, you might get the savings back in safety alone, not even just the savings and efficiencies and talk times and backlogs of inventory that are awaiting.
So you're dealing though with some industries that have very long life cycles of their product, like airlines. That's just with the planes, but with the workforce too, they are a little bit slower to adopt when the effect of the device will take. They'll have to live with their choice for a long time. So do you see a difference in who's adopting earlier than others?
That's a really good question. I think to the extent that we can tell a narrative that is similar to their existing narratives, like the right metaphor, right? So I like the mobile metaphor because people are very familiar with enterprise mobile, and that's actually not really fully penetrated some of these old school companies. And if you can talk about wearables in the same way that we're talking about mobile, where the value proposition is very present, I think people are much more willing to be receptive to that kind of narrative. And it's actually not an untrue narrative either. There's a lot of close analogy between the two. Obviously different to develop on both those platforms, but I think we'll get to the point where we won't have a wearables conversation without having a mobile conversation as well.
That's why Phil's here. Mobile.
Yeah.
So do you find people are asking for wearables into integration with their mobile?
In the enterprise?
And the enterprise or consumer, whichever you find.
No, it's not really being asked, but we're expecting it to show up, so we're trying to be out there on the front. And I do have a passion for warehouse operations.
We should have all shown up in our first employee outfits. I think all three of us apparently would have been in warehouses.
So, but again, with Airline, we have a lot of different, groups within the employee base, and so everyone has different requirements, and some view technology very sinisterly, and some embrace it. So I think you have to be very careful in what you do. Do something really simple but impactful. Do something that's fun, or maybe have a hackathon.
Speaking of that, so and corporate partnerships, we have Deloitte and Apex. Now, I heard that you recently partnered with Wearable World. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so we're going to do a hackathon at the end of the week to kind of work with third-party developers to figure out, hey, what can we do for the consumer space? But we've done internal hackathons for the employees. So we just take over the cafeteria for the weekend and invite all employees, like a ticket agent, somebody who works on the ramp, maintenance. Everybody comes together with IT and comes up with ways to use technology in the enterprise. And so we'll do one for Wearables probably end of summer.
That's great. So
Anyone in the audience competing in their hackathon?
No,
there are a lot of hands in
Is
the
it
back.
too late to sign up?
no, you can still sign up.
Consider it done. So you have you participated in other corporate partnerships or hackathons?
We have. We've invested a lot of our R&D time into looking kind of forward into what might be coming next, and hackathons are actually a really good bellwether for that. At the Qualcomm Uplink conference, Apex won the hackathon in a couple different categories, including the main category. And one of our employees got to throw out the opening pitch at the Padres game wearing Google Glass and filmed it. It was
That's
neat.
awesome.
Kind of a highlight of the week.
Did he hit?
He did actually. Yeah, they had two people throwing for two different organizations, and the first guy ground balled it on his first pitch, but Andrew nailed it. It was good.
You won. I mean, you guys are the winners. Right?
Was that a glass pitch?
Yeah.
So as a
Throwing stuff from
startup,
glass house.
startup to consumer generally might be perceived as easier than to enterprise because sales cycles are longer. Do you think that strategic partnerships like Qualcomm, like American Airlines, like Deloitte are necessary or a catalyst?
Absolutely. So, and there's misnomers, right, when it comes into, is the grass greener on the other side? Like, the grass is just different. That's all. Like, getting into the consumer, and some of the talks at today's event are about how do you make it big in the consumer space, and they're saying, well, it's so much easier in the enterprise. So it's in the consumer world, you're dealing with a million different individual opinions. How hard is that to design for? Like, what's the common denominator there? In a business, the ROI might be very, very clear, but how you navigate that business environment is best taught by partners who have been there and done that. So that's where the ecosystem is so important. Otherwise, you're flying blind, whether it's in the consumer or the industrial space. It takes that experience.
So now we have a workforce that, let's say, has adopted the same technology. So now they're not alone wearing Google Glass on the street, kind of being looked at strangely, but maybe everyone is a little more uniform and it's more accepted. Do you find that's the case, and has that been beneficial?
Yeah, so we even did what actually started as an experiment in that. We did a deployment of our business software at a Washington Capitals game. We put Google Glass on hundreds of fans. We did it many, many games in a row. And the reaction we got was really surprising. Only one person questioned the technology. Everyone else was excited that they had a new way to engage in the moment. I mean, you're at a sports game, it's exciting, you're getting premium content, specialized information, and it wasn't a distraction, it was just a little bit additional excitement for people.
What were you sharing?
We were sharing replays from anywhere in the stadium, so you could access any view you wanted anytime during the game. You could follow your favorite player rather than just who they had on the billboard. But we're passing down a very individualized experience to a mass crowd. Huge analogies to the exact way we serve information in the enterprise, but we were exposing it to consumers. And in that moment where they're actually all wearing glass together, it was a great experience for most people.
You sure it wasn't the free beer?
Positive.
Do you think that enterprises are reticent to kind of make a choice for a specific device? And I'd ask Phil the same question. To commit.
Right. So within the enterprise, unlike the consumer world, when they make an investment, it's a huge investment. So if I, as an individual, wanted to buy Google Glass, and I was like, man, that's cool. I might keep it forever. I might not like it. And then you go to eBay, your individual investment loss could actually be very small if you decide you don't like it. In a business, if you make a move, you're turning a huge ship. An unbelievable amount of unrecoverable resources go into that. So you have to work very closely with people who understand their business to help steer them to the right solution. I mean, how many times in business do people get excited about a technology and try and cram a solution onto it rather than say, what is it I'm trying to solve? And you help them work to that solution. That tends to be the better outcome.
How do you work through that?
That's very difficult because, the old school way was you'd have a product life cycle and a vendor would show up and show you the same device every 6 months, and it would go up the scale, and it would just get a little bit faster. We liked that. It was very comforting. Now we have these consumer devices that are taking over, and they change every 6 months. We rolled out tablets to all the flight attendants, and they were outdated before the last flight attendant got their new tablet. So I'd like to see some maturity around an abstraction layer for the enterprise for wearables, and really focus on touch points, beacon technology, awareness of employees, and then whatever device can seamlessly tap into that. So you don't have to worry about something that was hard-coded. So I think we'll get there, but.
So we touched on this.
APIs.
We touched on this yesterday, but going through the mobile wave of mobile and now into wearables, is there anything that you've done that you would want to do differently now?
Not design a sucky app.
That's where I was going, but
Our 1.0 was just a cut and paste really from .com. I think a lot of people fell into that trap, and I hope we don't screw it up with mobiles too, you know. I think 08 was the year of the developer, the mobile developer was a rock star, and 10 was the designer. And I think really wearables is about the psychology of wearables. I think the psychologist might be the new rock star. How do you properly integrate these with people and how they perceive them? Remember in 02, I got the first Razor phone, and it came with the little earpiece. You know, I was the original ear hole. It was cool.
It's like Bluetooth are crazy, right?
Yeah, it was cool, and I would use it, and then I realized that, man, you look like a dork because people don't know what you're doing. You're talking to yourself.
So do you see that in the different industries, things that each industry can learn from one another, best practices?
So I think industries can definitely learn from each other. I think in every industry, there's usually one or two companies that tend to be on the forefront of technology. Those companies are more willing to, for instance, adopt a small pilot. Though, by the way, there's for an enterprise no such thing as sort of like a tiny investment. You know, there's smaller and there's larger investments. And when you get a pilot, by the way, we were counting up the pilots earlier, and we think that there's probably about 30 to 40 pilots out there that we've seen. And the true answer is probably much more because a lot of people are keeping it quiet. But once people see the ROI in a sort of a unit setting, so like a relatively small, encapsulated setting, they're much more willing to proliferate it across their enterprise. And as their peers are see that they're getting value out of it, then their peers in the industry will adopt it as well.
We have about 8,000 pilots.
You have 8,000 pilots? Oh. Like as I was saying it, I was like, I just walked right into it.
A lot more.
Hey, you're awake.
Well played.
Good.
I was going to talk about ROI. I don't know which is more exciting, but can you expand on ROI? ROI in a workplace. What's the value of a happy employee? What's the value of a productive employee? And how do wearables fit into that?
So the value of a productive employee is much easier than the value of a happy employee. I don't know if anyone's really solved that, though. Deloitte has its own approach around culture diagnostics and whatnot. Yeah. So, yeah. By the way, like when you said psychologist, I could almost replace that with, consultants. I'm obviously biased, but we do try to have this empathy for our clients and their problems, and like we sit with them and we watch their workflow and we see how they work, and we try to put ourselves in their heads and take their problems to heart and see how we can design a true solution. And it's not necessarily about wearables; it's about sort of the host of technology enablers to get there. But I'm going kind of off your ROI question. On the ROI question, I think the productivity aspect of it in an operational environment is very clear. So if you've worked in an operation, people understand their metrics very well. Like when I worked in the call center, you have to pick up the phone within 3 rings or 18 seconds 92% of the time, right? Like people understand their metrics, so when you introduce a new piece of technology and you can introduce it in like sort of this unit setting where you can measure the metrics, the ROI becomes very clear when you're in a big operation. On a one-off basis, when you only have one person of a kind wearing the technology, it's much harder to measure. But over a large body of employees, when you have tens of thousands of employees, it's, that part of it I think is pretty clear as long as you identify the right use cases.
Processes that don't exist currently, are you seeing new metrics built around kind of this new frontier of wearables that we haven't seen before? Like what's the value of the person at the desk at an airline knowing that the flight is delayed before the passengers? Any creative, have you come up with any creative solutions? The Deloitte index of wearables.
No, that's a really good idea. You guys listening? It's the team over there. No. I think we're very early stage here, by the way. I mean, there are relatively few large-scale pilots, where people are actually wearing wearables. We do have many use cases, examples of people that, of your archetypical employee that could be using both of their hands, and then you have 10,000 of this kind of employee, and you're seeing like really dramatic gains in some aspect of the process in which they work. But we're early days, so I think that's.
So Brian, what about you? Actually, Phil. Brian said before that it's a big decision. There's no small investment in a wearable, and that person might be kind of on the line for that decision. So what would get you, from an ROI perspective, promoted or fired?
Oh, I could probably do both at the same time.
Yeah.
I think with airline space, social is a huge thing. So we are constantly monitoring social. We have a team dedicated to it. So I think anything that we could make that more enjoyable, where people are talking about a good experience more than not. So I think social is a big one right now. Everybody's all over social. The execs monitor social all the time. Productivity gains, speed of boarding passengers seamlessly with wearables.
So you see it less tied to dollars.
Yeah, I could see there's going to be a connection between the employee and the customer, where they can almost do almost like a silent dance, if you will, and not really talk to each other, but acknowledge each other and let them kind of move around, and seamlessly. And then have the employee work with customers that need additional help, traveling with kids or persons with disabilities or not English speaking. There's a lot of customers that we don't have time. I think that'll free up some extra time.
That's great.
And not actually reduce the labor force. I get that in there.
That's actually. So a lot of times when we talk about what we're doing in the enterprise space, we get really excited because we're seeing a lot of successes. There's also areas like that you pointed out that are landmines for us. The service industry, because of that connection with the customer, is hypersensitive compared to a bunch of guys who were already wearing safety glasses that we just added an optic into in order for them to do a manufacturing job better. So to Tam's point in the beginning, we can learn a lot from the way different enterprises adopt the technology, particularly in the technology side. How are we deploying it in indoor location environments? That problem spans every industry. But how we attach people for the right bandwidth, solve it in one spot, you can rinse and repeat that in every industry. But when it touches people...
I can't rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
So have you had to do a lot of...
behind the ears? No, that's one of the toughest areas for a technology-oriented business, because you don't necessarily have a good way of predicting how people react when, especially, they're not even the ones using the technology. Your gate attendants might be using it, but it's your customers who are the end decider of how it's adopted.
So have you done a lot of educating to your client and the end user?
We have spent an enormous amount of our time over the last 4 years. And so we've been doing this for 4 years. We've started deploying in the military, which you're told you will wear Terminator glasses. So you're taking people who were playing Call of Duty and you're giving them a glimpse of real-life Call of Duty. Them, it's education tied to excitement. When it's an environment where there's even a little bit of employee resistance, sometimes it's saying, here's understanding what it is their fears are, showing how it can help. In some cases, it can be a huge safety improvement for them that no one really thought of at first, and that's kind of discovered along the way. So a lot of it is bidirectional discovery too.
So the topic of the panel was the best, but every employee could be the best employee. So when you've deployed a pilot or a program, do you find that there are kind of market leaders who are teaching you things that you can adopt and also teach the other employees?
Yep. It's also interesting to see too. I mean, we're here in a wearable conference. This movie's been played before. 10 years ago was the last huge wearable wave. People did invest a lot into this technology.
8 years old?
Yeah. I shaved today. I immediately lose 15 years, and the camera adds 10 pounds, so it's a balance. What we see, man, you totally made me forget the question.
20 pounds.
20 pounds, yeah.
Best employee.
No, but in our space, our employees want to do an awesome job. And so back to those tablets that we give the flight attendants, right? 18,000 tablets. And they were viewed, why are you giving me this to replace this sales device? And it was, very rocky at first. And then they started seeing additional features as they started using it. And one of the features for the flight attendant was to see the manifest in real time and see who was a top customer who didn't get upgraded. So a top tier customer didn't get an upgrade to first class. And so they could see what seat they were in main cabin. Main cabin, by the way, not coach. We talked about that yesterday.
Yeah.
So they could see that Mrs. Smith didn't get an upgrade. They could go acknowledge her in private and give her like a drink or a special meal and say, hey, I can help you out, whatever you need. And no one knew what was going on. And our flight attendants, they said, that was the best thing that I could do that because I want to give excellent service. I didn't have that tool before. And that's really powerful.
So that brings up kind of the issue of asymmetrical information. That passenger didn't know that he or she was the only one who didn't get upgraded. Of course, they're not going to tell them that, but the consumers are seeing an app, and the employees also have technology as well. Is there transparency? Do they see the same information? Does that matter?
No. We choose to share some information. Yeah.
And have you dealt with this issue at all? Transparency between end user and also the employer data and what the employer is seeing.
One of the big things that's I'd say a popular feature in the enterprise is the ability for a supervisory staff to have access to information coming off the glasses. It raises issues. Am I being monitored? Maybe if you write an app so that you allow that feature. The alternative is there's only times when employees can choose to share their views so they can call and help. So it's a balance between surveillance versus service. And I think that distinction is going to be very important in the adoption of this technology in the enterprise. And those come up all the time. A lot of the workforces are unionized. They have very specific rules that you have to play by or there is no opportunity. It's very black and white in a lot of cases.
Do you see that, I don't want to use surveillance, but I will. So it's kind of on a meta basis, they're using more data trends, or do you think it's really being singled out per employee where they're going to look at an employee's work habits and...
So unfortunately, that is the question that people have. Is like, what can you glean from it? Everyone leaves a digital exhaust, right? Everything we do all day long, it's a matter of how people analyze that data, who's building the algorithms for it. You can glean a lot without even meaning to, which is why healthcare has such strong rules and regulations around HIPAA. They don't mess around with it.
So Tim, do you see that customers are approaching you looking for those metadata trends or trying to solve more micro problems when they're talking about wearables and technology?
By metadata trends, you mean they're looking to draw insight from the digital exhaust? Absolutely. I mean, outside of wearables, so put wearables aside, analytics and sort of predictive analytics and bringing together data, I mean, that's a huge and growing part of our business. I mean, compared to we were 20 years ago when we were like this small, I mean, that's probably one of the most significant growing aspects of our business. Wearables is part of that broader ecosystem. It represents a certain kind of data.
It's a real-time data, which is the most interesting part of it.
Yep. And I think in operational environments, the privacy situation is a little bit different because you think about, I used to work in a call center. Employees know they're being recorded. I mean, like everybody knows they're being recorded. There's a process around it. And I think the hard part is the psychology aspect of it and also making sure that people, there's sort of like a social contract that happens within an organization. As long as you write that social contract well and communicate it, I think that is the complicated part. It's the people aspect. I think a lot of the technology problems have been largely solved.
We don't monitor employees, we observe.
You should use that word, observe, just observe. So Phil, how did you see in the wave of mobile, who was a psychologist there? Or was there one?
There really wasn't.
Is that why we need one now?
Yeah, I think we do. Yeah, I don't want to screw up mobiles or wearables.
So how do you see that person coming into place? Is this a part of the education, part of the rapid adoption?
I think it's maybe it's a new position. I don't know, chief philosopher of mobile. But I think we just got to do small little, pilots, and kind of learn from that, and not commit to a massive rollout because we've done big rollouts and we found out, hey, we didn't actually talk to the customer who was actually the employee of the device. We didn't talk to them to see what they wanted. I think I think small little tests to kind of see what's going on.
So taking a page from Brian and the CAPS game, you gave out a limited number to, how many participants were there in that project?
We did a couple hundred over the course of about a dozen games.
So if you had to give advice to American Airlines about how to test it out using that.
So as you said, it's all about helping people understand your intentions. It's that social contract. Like, what is it that you're trying to do with this experiment? So for us, we had enough people on site to, not to say handhold, but give people the attention they needed to understand how to use the device, and then we let them enjoy it in their own kind of space while we were helping educate other people. And that seemed to be a pretty good exchange.
Plus you had a lot of people doing it, right?
And they were already
So
drinking
they
too.
felt
so, I mean,
awkward together.
Yeah,
If
exactly.
you feel awkward together, you're fine with it. But
It's
if you're by yourself
team. Yeah.
In the main cabin.
in the main cabin,
Or
that's where,
baggage,
that's
yeah.
where it's happening.
Yep. Yep.
There's a disco ball back there.
Movies, free drinks, main cabin.
Hey, slow it down now.
Yeah, all the wearable technology you want.
Does anyone in the audience have any questions for the panel on the enterprise and the approach to wearables? Don't think so. So Tam, maybe we'll wrap up with you. So what are your overarching thoughts of the trend of the next year? Do you think that the trend approach 2015 will, I know you can't predict, but will be featuring wearables more prominently?
So we did our relationship, our alliance in this past January, so
Yeah.
we've been sort of in the space for less than a year. When we first did it, we did it with the intent that, with the idea that the market opportunity would emerge within 18 to 24 months. Now that we're paying close attention to the market, we think that it's actually going to happen before then. So yeah, I think the overarching message is that wearables in the enterprise is really today. I mean, it's early day. It's still early days today in the enterprise, so sort of small scale pilots. But it doesn't take very much, once you prove the ROI in a small scale pilot to roll it out, to the large enterprise. It's really about the ROI and being able to measure that.
There's definitely challenges of scale though. Like, so we're seeing adoption happen way quicker than we anticipated, and then people are thinking through the planning for the scaling, and we expect that to evolve and roll out over global enterprises over time.
Thank you guys. I think we're going to wrap up now. And thanks so much for your insight. So let's give a round of applause to
Thank you.